Hi, I am Delmer Sib, and today I'm going to briefly speak about the rationale and importance of this project. For some years, I've been working along with graphic designers, publishers, and community activists and leaders to document local and rural community history. My focus has been the analysis of micronarratives to inform rural community historical consciousness. This project stems from the realization that most of Belizean history has been dedicated to the documentation of urban, political, economic, and even social history, while rural settings have been left relatively understudied. This presentation is centered on presenting the book, Hope in Sarteneja, The Adventures of Jorge Verde. I am presenting an overview of this book along with Ms. Jorge Verde, the daughter of the late Mr. Jorge Verde, who recently passed away. My introduction to this presentation will focus on examining the theoretical foundation of the project. Before we even get to discuss the themes of analysis or structure of the story, we must make an effort to answer two key questions. Why are we writing this history? For who are we writing this history? I think the answer to the first question has been preempted. We are documenting rural community history. We're contributing to an understanding of Belizean history. We're highlighting the work of local readers in the process of nation building, and we are writing popular or public history that appeals to the regular reader in an interesting way. The second question focuses on for who. For us, it is very clear that these stories are written to inform villagers of these communities about the life, triumphs, and struggles of their ancestors. The public, not necessarily academia, is the audience to our writing. The book Hope in Sarteneja, The Adventures of Jorge Verde, takes a historical approach that is enriched by literary devices. Francois Ferret argues that history is the child of narrative. It is evident that there is a strong connection between historical events and narrative. Through analysis, historians examine evidence and data to create a coherent and logical story. Lawrence Stone perhaps provides one of the most comprehensive definitions of historical narrative. He states, narrative is taken to mean the organization of material in a chronologically sequential order and the focusing of the content into a single coherent story, albeit with subplots. The two essential ways in which narrative history differs from structural history is that its arrangement is descriptive rather than analytical, and that its central focus is on man, not on circumstances. It therefore deals with the particular and specific rather than the collective and statistical. Narrative is a mode of historical writing, but it is a mode that affects and is affected by the content method. Stone's definition is bifocal. On one hand, he relates to a coherent story, and on the other hand, he looks at narratives as descriptive in nature. Alan Magill adds to the understanding of historical narratives by highlighting that four major approaches exist: micronarratives, master narratives, grand narratives, and meta-narratives. This project benefited from the theoretical foundations of historical narrative. The writers were engaged with a critical process of selection. Mr. Jorge Verde provided crucial information for the project, but his account underwent questioning and cross-checking. The evidence was placed in a sequential manner to provide the story of Jorge Verde in the context of Sarteneja and Belize. The personal and community interactions provide a unique view into community history. The narrative intertwines human agency, conduct, and allows an avenue to understanding several themes developed in the book. This is a strength of the narrative approach. This mode of explanatory and analytical discourse is actually embedded in a form of discourse that is exclusive to itself. Historical narratives also appeal to the public. So innately, this book is a gift to the family of Mr. Jorge Verde, to the community of Sarteneja, and also to Belizean history. Now we're going to be having Ms. Jorge Verde presenting the book based on her father's story.
Hi, I am Jorge Verde, and I'll begin by speaking about how this story came to be. To give you a little introduction on what the story, where does it arrive? How does it start? Well, I've always been in love with Sarteneja. Growing up as a child and into my teenage years, I could always remember being so proud of my village, the place I call my home. I haven't been able to always live here, but I have never abandoned it. Perhaps it's because my parents have been in love with the place before me. I mean, I get it. In Sarteneja, they grew up. In Sarteneja, they met, and in Sarteneja, they fell in love. As they would always remember their favorite song, Cerca del Mar. I could recall that my interest, though, was born over story time with my father, over a family lunchtime, at bedtime, or at the evening tea outside in front of the sea, catching the sunset and enjoying the salty sea breeze. These stories about my village home brought me to appreciate this community and all its natural beauty as God's blessings. Among the most prevalent stories of this village is that of how it was formed and how it has been resilient under the divine providence and protection of God. Perhaps that is why I call it the place of hope. Aside from my personal interest in environmental conservation and sustainable use, now as a mother of twin boys, it has come to my worry that these stories be kept alive so that the love and appreciation of Sarteneja lives on. The more we know about the background of a place, especially for a community, the more we will be able to contribute to its natural and cultural preservation. It's my hope to assist our community in building our younger generations a sense of ownership and responsibility of our fishing village and of the Emerald Waters, the place we call our home, Sarteneja. And so how do we get this story? The story of Jorge Verde. Who was this man? Well, Jorge Verde was born in Sarteneja village on the 6th day of December 1938 to his mom, Victoria, and his father, Juan Verde. At the age of 23, he married Elvia, and they had one firstborn son and 3 daughters. He met 8 of his grandchildren and 5 of his great-grandchildren. As of his early teenage years, he gained numerous experiences as a fisherman and a businessman, trading and engaging in commerce, but most importantly, building new friendships and leaving a mark along the way. He met numerous people with whom he shared stories, lent his helping hand, and always contributed to the greater good. During his life, he contributed in the fisheries, agriculture, tourism, real estate, and religious sectors of this country. His love for God, his family, and his country were his driving force for life, and it is what made him accomplish his wonderful deeds for what he's known for. He has always wanted to share his story. He has always had many. And it was when we met this amazing team that he felt accomplished. He felt like he could be heard. And the reason for sharing his story wasn't to have his name out there, but because he believed that sharing these stories would be the driving force for our continuity, for our resilience, and for never giving up at our community and knowing that we are the ones who can make the change. Well, the book, I'll talk a little bit about the book. The plot of this story, what it is about. The picture or the image that you are seeing at this moment is an image of what actually lies right behind me in my background. It's the mural of which was inspired this story. It was one of his most famous stories, as I have just mentioned. It tells the story of the beginning at the corner of it, you will see a sunrise, and at the other corner, you'll see a sunset. And this is how he would tell his story. At the sunrise, there lies a community. And in that community, there's a hope. And there it was just a land, but people found it to have water and a lot of riches that nature gave it. And so with the help and collaboration of the people, they were able to build a community and a society, fisheries and agriculture on what built it. It was built by the water, the freshwater pond well that they found in the center of the community. But this story continues when he explains all that it took when Hurricane Janet struck the village. Everything that was known, everything that was built was lost. And little is known about this story, as nobody else had told the story before. And so his thing was to share this story of how from nothing this village came to me, and one storm brought it down completely. But it was not the end. It was actually the beginning to a new era for the community. And from there, they were able to rebuild the place. They were able to experience a rebirth of community pride, of community generation, and heritage, cultural pride. The story goes on to explore and to share how this community didn't stay there. It gives us the details of other stories that have never been told. And through this story, my father wanted not only the family or the villagers on Belize, but everyone to know our story, not for just pride for ourselves, but also because he wanted everyone to know that there's always hope in a certain situation. From this story, we gathered some central themes and lessons learned. One of the major themes found in this is that you can be the driving force to make a change. Building empathy is the beginning of this. Help starts at home. We do not wait for others to come. We can be the difference. We have what we need, and we need to develop those skills that are necessary for those things that we don't necessarily immediately have. He wanted us to know that we can explore beyond our mental boundaries, educate ourselves, question, dare to dream, and imagine and work for it. We can do it for ourselves and for our communities. And that is how communities are built, and that is how they grow. Following to this, we have community collaboration. Many is possible if they all work together. If we all come together and lend our support to community projects, we can of course push them forward and create greater things, not only for ourselves, but for the future generation to come. But also, we shouldn't sit there and wait for someone to create this. We can create our own forms of development. We can think about them and we can make them possible. Also, sharing culture is another theme that comes to keep it alive. Sharing culture to keep it alive is a main theme found in this story. The beauty of life lies within our diversity. We should embrace our uniqueness, but not hold on to it. We should share it so that it can live throughout our words, throughout our stories, and our ancestors. Accomplishments will have a purpose. It is what they left us as our heritage, and we should pass it by and create our own story as well to pass by. Another theme is the cultural and community pride. We should never deny our history, our heritage, our cultural and ethnic roots, and our people. It doesn't matter where we go, they will know where we come from based on our accent, based on our stories, and based on our life experiences. These are what will define us wherever we go. And another one, which we'll call the last one for now, but I'm sure there are quite some more. The last one I'll mention is love for nature. Above all, the appreciation for our natural heritage. Realization that it's not ours to keep for ourselves, but for us to keep alive and in healthy conditions. We should always think that what we enjoy of nature, for example, what my father admired of the Corozal Bay, the bay itself, and all its natural beauty, including the flora, the fauna, and all that makes this area unique. It's for us to use, but not for us to keep. It's for us to share it, and we owe it to our generations to come. And so we must make sure that they survive and that they are in healthy conditions so that they can also enjoy it the way that we do. This book in particular, we started writing it before the passing of my father. And it was him who reached out and would say, this needs to be recorded. We can't just let it happen and be spoken about without any documentation. And nobody, of course, expects the death of anyone. And when his death came, then it was, a sudden, but we are happy. And I'm sure he is very happy where he is, knowing that he left his mark. So I will speak a little bit about the legacy of Mr. Jorge Verde. There are many things he accomplished in this life, but I will mention some that become part of what made him a great man. Amongst the many things he did in 1959 to 1963 for 2 years and a third term, 1974 to 1976, he served as a village chairman to the Sarteneja village. He helped in many ways in the development. Along with his hardworking council, they accomplished many developments for the village progress. The most prevalent one was lobbying with the government as a voice for his village to open the roads to access communication with the towns and nearby villages. He was a man of work and deed, and so he and his councillors physically offered into the labor of the opening of the road with the axe and their machetes. During his years also in politics, he was a follower and a supporter of the movements led by Honorable George Price, and he would accompany him in visiting the most remote areas and meeting the people from which they work for. He was also a servant leader. It was during his late 20s when he was invited to explore his spirituality by the Jesuits in Belize City. And it was there where he found his relationship with God, and that was just the beginning of his spiritual journey. He became a minister of the Word and a minister of the Holy Eucharist and served the Catholic Church until his last days. In 1973, he was appointed by Her Majesty the Queen as a Justice of the Peace and was later named Honorable Jorge Verde, Senior Justice of the Peace and Commissioner of the Supreme Court of Belize. He was able to serve his villagers and all those who sought his assistance for legal, moral, and civil guidance. Throughout his years of service, he held honesty, integrity, and citizenship within his moral priorities. Love for God, neighbor, and self. He would always preach that being of service to one another is by far our mission in this world. It's the way he founded his life, and by that means, he went about always helping others whenever or wherever he could. He never held on to material riches, as he believed that the greatest riches are found in heaven, and for that, we are here to work for in this world by being kind and loving to one another. And finally, promoting a loving family that prays together. As his daughter and witness of his most gentle and generous heart, I would say his greatest legacy was his love and dedication to building and maintaining a loving family with a firm belief in God and a unity that overcomes any of life's challenges. As I said, this book inspired many things and brings about many other things. And I think it's one for this area, but I'm sure the hope of my father is that it won't be the last one. There are still many stories out there, not only in my village, but in all villages throughout Belize that have been unheard, untold, and we should get those in writing. We should get to know these stories and pass them on. And that is how our communities and our culture will continue living for days and days to come. With this, I shall close our presentation, and the room will now be open for questions or comments.